Let me remind you that Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Miami Airport by FBI agents. The agents didn't have to fly to the island to detain him. Suppose he foresaw his imminent arrest and began to prepare for it after his release in 2009, gradually turning the island from a place of rest and entertainment into an impregnable fortress. Ideally, we would need a remote atoll in the South Pacific, for example, between French Polynesia and Kiribati. That way, it would lie outside the primary sphere of interest of major powers, meaning limited patrol oversight, and the absence of nearby military bases would work to our advantage. The legal status of the island is also crucial. The island should be registered as private property under the flag of a country with lenient legislation. Now, let's come back down to earth. In reality, no private island can exist outside the law. All territories fall under the jurisdiction of a sovereign state or are governed by international law. In this case, Little St. James falls under U.S. jurisdiction, making it fully subject to American law. From a legal, geographical, and operational standpoint, it would be extremely difficult to create a defensive system capable of successfully protecting Epstein from arrest or investigation by the U.S. government because the island lies within U.S. territorial waters up to 12 nautical miles. It falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Any interception of communications, drone surveillance, satellite monitoring, or patrol by boats is entirely lawful for U.S. authorities. Any attempt at armed resistance would automatically turn the situation into an armed rebellion against the federal government, punishable by life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Let us assume that Jeffrey was aware of the impending arrest, understood the consequences he was facing, and concluded that this was his only chance at survival. A small party island in the middle of the ocean would then be transformed to serve his personal security and protection. First, it is important to outline the island's characteristics. Area, 30 hectares. Distance to the neighboring island of St. Thomas, 3 kilometers. Population, up to 50 people, staff, and guests. At this stage, however, there would no longer be any guests. We are creating a rigid, closed system with its own internal laws and rules, staffed only by people loyal to us. Ideally, one might seek former Special Forces operators or military personnel with combat experience. In practice, however, that approach could prove counterproductive. Any trained professional could potentially be a recruited intelligence asset, and any dissatisfied employee could become an informant. It should also be understood that none of them will swear allegiance to you like their king, and none of them is a samurai to lay down his life for you, saving from a potential enemy. In reality, security personnel would more likely be recruited from economically disadvantaged regions, for example, from Cuba or nearby Caribbean islands. A similar approach has reportedly been associated with Nicolás Maduro, whose residence, according to various reports, was guarded by Cuban personnel, said to have defended it at the cost of their lives. The island's infrastructure in Epstein's daily life includes a helipad, a pier, the main mansion, a temple, guest houses, and rumored to be several underground rooms that will play an important role in our story. The island is completely under our control, but as stated earlier, we have no sovereignty over it. Like any other private island, it is under the jurisdiction of a state, in our case, the U.S. St. Thomas, which is not Epstein's, is nearby another hidden risk you'll understand later. And now, we will try to simulate a hypothetical defense of the island by completely re-equipping its infrastructure. Install underwater motion sensors around the island to detect divers or underwater drones. Of course, we will need qualified technicians for delivery, installation, and maintenance. In our hypothetical model, all employees are trustworthy people. Any dissatisfied employee could expose our preparations and lead to a quicker arrest. Install thermal imaging cameras around the perimeter hidden in the vegetation. Means of camouflage, the use of natural terrain, covering buildings with plants, the use of radiation absorbers, electronic defense, electronic warfare systems to jam signals from drones and GPS trackers. If we were making a movie about a villain and his villainous island, we'd probably add autonomous patrol drones. But in reality, they're easy to intercept or jam with FCC-approved tools. Additionally, drones tend to drain their batteries quickly. Next, we will need a short-range radar mounted on top of a hill to detect boats and helicopters. But even here there are difficulties. In fact, such systems require licenses and their signals can be intercepted by the NSA, and you will immediately attract the attention of intelligence agencies, and their signals can be intercepted by the NSA, and such actions will immediately attract the attention of the intelligence services. Communication and encryption. Satellite internet via Starlink with AES 256 encryption. No cellular networks, only secure Iridium satellite phones. Shielded Faraday rooms for confidential meetings, but the FBI could still access all data by court order, FISA court. Physical protection, hidden firing positions, coastal barriers, barbed wire, mines, partly fictitious scenario. Underwater barriers, invisible networks or acoustic sensors to warn of intruders. In practice, it sounds very doubtful. Air defense, short-range air defense systems. In fact, they are tightly controlled by governments. Hypothetically, to shoot down a modern aircraft with something like the S-300, which we of course condemn, requires a team of dozens of trained specialists and a full-fledged logistics infrastructure. For a private individual, this is simply impossible. In real life, private citizens cannot legally own air defense systems, manpads, or heavy weapons. Any attempt to do so is a criminal offense. Acquiring air defense systems is extremely difficult, but not entirely impossible. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, many old models of manpads flooded the black market. However, modern complex systems are still impossible to purchase. By the way, the president of Venezuela had many air defense systems, but they never fired a single shot. Trump attributed this to the secret weapon of confusion. When exposed to a person, he becomes disoriented in space and experiences unpleasant symptoms. But I think that there could have been recruitment or bribery of people close to him. Now we come to the most interesting part, the bunker. Depth, 15 meters under the main building, the maximum possible on a coral reef. On a mountainous island, the depth can reach 40 meters, much deeper. Entrance, disguised as a swimming pool or elevator. Biometric access, DNA retinal scan, and behavioral analysis. Self-destruction of data is triggered upon intrusion. Multiple false entrances and underwater emergency exits. Systems, water supply for 30 days, desalination plant plus underground reservoir of desalinated seawater, more than 10,000 liters. Construction, reinforced concrete class H6. Electricity, solar panels and diesel generator. Serious sound insulation is required, otherwise the noise will give us away. Lead and boron lining for protection against radiation and eavesdropping is questionable, since depth restrictions prevent the construction of a nuclear-proof bunker. Food storage, rations and vacuum packaging. U.S. military MRE rations can last up to 30 years, but whether we can build enough storage space is another question. Air filtration system with protection against chemical and biological agents. Emergency exit, tunnel to the beach or submarine, according to a fictional scenario. In practice, the island's geology, fine limestone, makes the deep bunkers prone to collapse. Jeffrey faces another serious problem. Creating a bunker will require top-level specialists, but unfortunately, most of them are already busy building bunkers for Bezos and Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's bunker is reportedly worth billions. Epstein's personal fortune is much more modest, about $500 million. Still a huge sum for ordinary people around the world who, due to deception or the temptation of easy money, continue to come here, again and again, becoming part of the files and this tragic story. Now about personnel selection. Only proven people with many years of experience. Everyone signs a non-disclosure agreement and threat of disclosing incriminating evidence. Recruitment is a key component of our story. If we come across an informant, or if someone gets recruited by intelligence agencies, the island will change hands, and its former owner will end up in prison far sooner than happened in reality. Logistics. Supplies. Delivery by yacht or private jet to St. Thomas, then by boat. It is important to understand that the reconstruction of the island to protect it and the construction of new facilities will require a large pier and marina. The dock on the island is ridiculously small at the moment. If St. Thomas cannot be purchased, then a new pier will have to be built on the current island. Ideally, of course, build a covered pier to prevent surveillance from satellites. Underwater cargo drones fictional scenario. We will also need supplies delivered from the mainland. Civilian cover vessels, registered as research or fishing vessels with double hulls. However, the constant flow of ships heading to the island will inevitably attract additional attention. Air deliveries are practically impossible. In reality, any such activity is easily tracked using satellites, the automatic identification system, AIS, financial transactions, and intelligence services. Weapons, impossible to obtain legally. Even a hunting rifle requires a license on the U.S. Virgin Islands, where our island is located. Money, cash and cryptocurrency, Monero, Zcash. For anonymity, since all banking transactions are monitored by FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Now let's imagine a hypothetical assault scenario on Little St. James Island in 2019. First, we need a name for our operation. The first failed attempt to remove Maduro in 2020 was called Operation Gideon. The successful operation carried out on the 3rd of January 2026 was named Operation Absolute Resolve. The name should reflect the operation's essence while sounding impactful. Something like a crushing defeat for our pathetic enemies, or trembling rats caught between the anvil and hammer of justice. If that's not enough, consider this. Near Haiti lies an island in the Caribbean that became a 17th century refuge, an unofficial capital for pirates. It was a semi-anarchic port used for fencing stolen goods, resting between raids, and as an impregnable fortress, its rocky terrain made it nearly inaccessible. The island was named Tortuga, turtle, due to its resemblance to a turtle's shell. Tortuga was safe harbor for any sea wolf who set foot on its shores. Now Navy SEALs and Delta Force face a difficult task, extracting the turtle from its shell. This clear analogy could form the basis of our operation's name, Turtle Soup. The objective: extract the target at any cost. Assault phases by U.S. forces. Phase 0, preparation, 72 hours. Reconnaissance. National Reconnaissance Office satellites thermal and radar imaging. Imagery intelligence. Satellite imagery reveals barbed wire along the beach perimeter. Firing positions pillboxes at main beach entrances. 3 old but maintained manpads, Igla or Stinger, on the mansion roof and hidden in the jungle. PMN or Claymore mines on approaches to the bunker. Cyber ops, hacking surveillance and comm systems, creating blind spots and simulating normal operation. Recon aircraft, P-8 Poseidon, MQ-9 Reaper, 24/7 surveillance. Signals intelligence, intercepting radio traffic, thermal and radar reconnaissance. Human intelligence, agents embedded within support staff, intelligence on bunker location, ventilation, life support systems. Underwater drones, seabed scanning around the island for tunnels, obstacles. Cyber intelligence, hacking satellite links, eavesdropping via compromised staff devices. Planning, joint participation of FBI Hostage Rescue Team, HRT, U.S. Marshals SOG, and Navy SEALs support under Department of Justice authority. Objective: minimize casualties, capture Epstein alive, preserve evidence. Phase 1, isolation. Airspace control. FAA imposes 20-mile no-fly zone. F-15 or F-16 fighters on alert, ready to intercept any aircraft. Naval blockade. 2 Coast Guard response boat medium vessels plus Arleigh Burke-class destroyer on the horizon. SSN submarine monitoring underwater activity. Electronic warfare. EC-37B, compass call aircraft jams, all island frequencies, GPS, cellular, Wi-Fi, drones. EA-18G Growler from USS Kearsarge suppresses radars and radio comms. AGM-88 HARM or ADM-160 MALD missiles launched to simulate attack and trigger manpads activation. Once manpads power up F-35B jets from Kearsarge, eliminate them with precision GBU-39 SDB strikes. Island rendered blind and deaf. Phase 2, penetration. Insertion tactics. Stealth approach. RHIB boats with silenced engines launch from destroyer 10 kilometers out. Diversion. Decoy drones simulate beach landing. Guards open fire, revealing pillbox positions. Simultaneously, MH-60M helicopters conduct vertical insertion into the jungle rear area, outside pillbox coverage. Beach defense breach. Mine clearance. EOD teams deploy Mine Wolf vehicles or robotic systems, Talon, PackBot, to clear paths. Smoke and EW. Smoke generators plus comms jamming. AC-130J gunship suppresses pillboxes with 30mm cannon and 105mm howitzer. Assault teams in MK5 body armor use thermobaric grenades to neutralize firing positions. 6 SEAL operators approach the beach in combat rubber raiding craft. Use underwater breathing apparatus for stealthy exit from the boats. Cover team. 2 snipers positioned on a neighboring island providing overwatch. A 3 kilometers distance is quite challenging for precision shots. All teams synchronize via GPS time. Communications encrypted tactical network. 1 firing position near the temple quickly neutralized with an M320 grenade launcher. Counter-jamming. U.S. forces deploy portable EW systems, for example Thor, to disable enemy jammers. Phase 4. Bunker assault. According to intelligence, the bunker has 2 levels, depth 15 meters, with entrances through the mansion and an emergency hatch near the dock. Eris team, main assault, penetrates via the mansion, using thermite charges to breach armored doors. Sharon team reserve, secures the emergency exit, installs blocking devices. Close quarters battle tactics. Use of flashbangs, IR markers, night vision goggles. FLIR thermal imagers to detect bodies inside the bunker. Talon S reconnaissance drone inserted into ventilation shafts. If the target resists non-lethal weapons deployed, taser, stun grenades. In case of suicide risk, immediate physical capture. Phase 5. Mop-up and evacuation. Arrest all surviving guards. Extraction of servers, hard drives, and documents. Deployment of temporary EW beacons to prevent remote data destruction. Evacuation via V-22 Osprey to an airbase in Puerto Rico. Losses hypothetical. U.S. troops, 0 to 2 wounded in case of mines or ambushes. Defenders, 10 to 15 killed, the rest arrested. Civilians, none the island was evacuated in advance under the pretext of maintenance. Let's sum it up once again. Why is the plan for a successful defense of the island doomed to failure in reality? Little St. James is not Afghanistan. It is U.S. territory. Any military activity there would be immediately noticed. It is impossible to legally hire 20 armed operatives. The Department of Homeland Security and FinCEN would track the money transfers. It is impossible to import weapons. Ports and airports are under CBP control. Satellite intelligence would detect the construction of a bunker within a week. One traitor, and everything would collapse, as actually happened. Servants, pilots, and accountants cooperated with the FBI. Even with maximum hypothetical preparation, an assault on Little St. James would take less than 2 hours and end in a complete U.S. victory. The island is too small, too close to American bases, and too transparent to modern intelligence. Surveillance, satellites, NRO, reconnaissance aircraft P-8 Poseidon, and listening device provide constant surveillance. Human factor, servants, pilots, accountants, all potential informants. Legal authority. With a warrant, federal forces can use any necessary force to make an arrest. What actually happened? The arrest at Miami Airport, not on the island, already shows that the government didn't need to storm the island. If he had started large-scale construction to create fortifications, the Coast Guard would have noticed this activity, and the FBI would have acted immediately instead of waiting for him to fly to Miami. In reality, knowing that he would be arrested, Epstein would have hidden in a country loyal to him where his safety would be ensured. I didn't want to voice this thought, but